Okay, so tonight's homework I've titled, Let's Write with Figurative Language. That's literally what it sounded like in my head when I came up with the title, so deal with it. Alright, so tonight we're going to be talking about how to create figurative language sentences within our scary short story. So something that I'm looking for as far as getting that coveted A is not only that you're writing like Poe, which is first and foremost, but also that you're really thinking about your word choice, as we talked about in the homework last night, and then in the homework tonight, thinking about being descriptive by using figurative language. So I've got a made-up fictitious story that is actually a story start, I guess you could say, in paragraph form, and you're going to practice some fairly simple figurative language pieces in reference to this paragraph, but hopefully it will give you an idea of what you can do in your own story. So let's go ahead and get started. So why is it important to write with figurative language, especially in an imaginative story? Well, if you put two stories side by side, one that's written in just plain language and one that's written with just the right amount of figurative language, which one is going to be more engaging for the reader? The answer is simple, and we actually talked about this in last night's homework as well. In that, one is just telling me a story and the other one is really showing me a story and allowing me as the reader to develop something within my own head, a mental image and picture. And that is where figurative language and your word choice and being descriptive really becomes so powerful. So it really helps the reader understand the character and the story better, and it allows me to form the image in my mind instead of just telling me. Okay? So some simple figurative language. I've picked only a few so that this homework isn't that long. There's a lot of other options that you could use. If you've got access to your LA vocab packet and there's a whole section in the front, the very first 10 or 15 are all different figurative language pieces that you could include in your story if you wanted to. I've only chosen 5 for tonight's homework. So alliteration is the first one we're going to practice, that idea of repeating an additional consonant sound in a sentence. We're also going to practice simile. You know the definitions to these two, simile and metaphor. You're going to practice hyperbole, and then also one of my personal favorites, onomatopoeia. And onomatopoeia fits really well within the context of a scary short story, so that's one that should be pretty easy to include. All of these definitions, by the way, come from your LA vocab packet, just like I said earlier. So we're going to practice. Number in your notes 1 to 5, leaving some space in between because you're going to write at least, a pretty detailed sentence. So leaving a line or 2 or 3 in your notes would be sufficient. Okay, so here is my example paragraph. And what we're going to do is we're just going to pick apart this paragraph and try and add in our own figurative language to make the paragraph more interesting. You do not have to write the entire paragraph. We're just picking small sections and sentences. So the paragraph is, and this is the only time I'm going to read it to save on time in the video, but Eric was home alone for a rainy weekend. His parents were out of town. Eric was looking forward to watching some scary movies and staying up late into the night. While midway through the second movie eating popcorn, Eric heard a noise on the other side of the door leading to the garage. So let's try some alliteration first. Pick a sentence from the story to recreate. Choose one word in that sentence and add at least one more nearby with that same consonant sound. Go ahead and write that new sentence in the number 1 section in your notes. So my example was, I picked the very first sentence and I said, Eric was home alone for a rainy weekend, running the house while his parents were out of town. So I chose the R consonant sound to repeat. And I only did 2 words here, so it doesn't have to be like our explanation where it becomes like a tongue twister and every word in the sentence is a repeating consonant sound. It can be just one word nearby. 1 or 2 would be sufficient. So pause the video and you go ahead and recreate one sentence from the above paragraph trying to use alliteration. Okay, the next one we're going to practice is onomatopoeia. So pick a sentence in the story above that might have a noise attached to it and add a noise word in. And write that new sentence for number 2. So my example is, Eric was home alone for a rainy weekend, the rain pinging against the window. So the word pinging being the onomatopoeia word in this instance. Okay, the next one we're going to practice is hyperbole. So choose an idea in the story above to exaggerate and possibly add to the suspense, and write that down for number 3. So my example is a little bit longer, but I said Eric was home alone for a rainy weekend, the rain seeming to come down in hundreds of gallons per second. Its hard pinging added to the sounds of the horror movie Eric had just begun. So I kind of added in, probably shouldn't have done that as an example, but whatever, it is what it is. So the hundreds of gallons per second is my hyperbole, and then the pinging onomatopoeia word made its entrance here again. So you see how they kind of connect, and once you start, it's hard to stop. All right, the last one we're going to practice, oh no, this isn't the last one. There's 2 more. Simile is fairly easy at this point. You're just comparing 2 things using like or as. So my example, Eric heard a noise on the other side of the door leading to the garage, almost like a dog scratching at that door. But we don't have a dog, Eric thought to himself. Sorry, my iPad's pinging a noise at me, letting me know I need to do something. Sorry if you heard that. And it's a distraction. Whatever. Okay. This should be the last one, I think. So we're practicing metaphor. So like simile, this should be fairly easy. You're comparing 2 things without using like or as, or saying one thing just is another. So my example, Eric was home alone for a rainy weekend, an abandoned orphan, while his parents were out of town. So comparing Eric to an orphan, because his parents are gone. Makes sense. Okay, now we're finished. So go ahead and don't forget to do the digital whisk. I actually think I'm going to go ahead and ask you to do one of those examples for a bonus question, some bonus extra credit points. So hopefully you came up with some good ideas, and this has inspired you to start using some figurative language on a regular, consistent basis when you're writing. Okay, see you guys in class tomorrow.